Hey, it's David Childers, and welcome to the July monthly market report. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. The number of people that pulled their homes off the market. We're going to talk about the effects of all that's happened this year now that we're at the middle of the year and what the second half of this year is going to look like. And we're also going to take a look at the phenomenon of expired listings. Some good information there from our friends at RedX. So I want to do that. So with that as a backdrop, let's go ahead and hop in. All right, our sellers giving up. It's the rise in delistings. We talked about that. I don't think that delistings are actually not the problem. They are a symptom of the underlying problem. We'll talk about that. But these sort of headlines are everywhere. Sellers pulling their homes off the market, the fastest pace since 2020. Sellers giving up, sellers not getting offers, all the things that we're hearing out in the market causing people to say, are we even going to sell it? There was a massive study done by Redfin, and it was fascinating on what it tells us about sellers right now. And I want to break that down over the next few minutes. They said nationwide, 5.8% of all U.S. home listings were taken off the market in April, spring. That's tied to December 2025 for the highest share since March of 2020 during the pandemic, when that ground the housing market to a halt and spooked sellers. Then prior to 2020, these delistings were never as common as they are now. I think in just a minute, we're going to break down why this is happening. But, at the bottom line there, if you have a seller that does not have a motivation in this market, they're in trouble if they're not educated about the dynamics of what's happening. And oh, by the way, this is one phenomenon that's happening in, a lot of major markets. This is top 50 markets right now where sellers are choosing to wait, anywhere from Atlanta to Pittsburgh. Sellers saying, hey, we're going to pull our home off the market, delist it, and really get into sort of this waiting period. The question is why? Why are they doing this? In the study, it kind of broke down three main forces that are helping, I believe, to probably reshape this market. We did a KCM webinar on this. If you saw this will be a little bit of a recap on that. If you didn't listen, you're in for a surprise here. So first one, recent inventory growth. The inventory has grown. And a lot of sellers don't realize there's competition out there. A lot of buyers are like, we're ready to make a deal because of that. Two, shifting prices, folks having this sort of pandemic era expectation of the sales price of their home. Three, longer days on the market. That is for sure happening all over the country. Okay. So if we think about this, we think about these dynamics, they're affecting the market. People are pulling their homes off the market. How do I show up as the educator? That's the question that we're looking at. The bottom line is inventory has been rising for 4 straight years. Let's look at active inventory going all the way back to 2017. COVID comes in right there where the red bar is. We deplete inventory all across the country, and we've been building back ever since. That's the story of American real estate. And listen, even in the last year, that's sort of plateaued. You can see it there where it's kind of rising up and then kind of plateauing. We'll keep an eye on that to say, hey, what's going to happen there. But that is certainly true about the state of listings. Redfin said in many parts of the country, listings have piled up. I don't know if they piled up, but as more homeowners try to sell as buyer activity slows, that increased competition among sellers means some homes sit unsold, prompting owners to pull them off the market rather than cut their price. I think this is something that is happening all over the country, like we talked about. And there are a couple of reasons that there's a disconnect. Anytime you see a disconnect in the market, I want to step in and be the educator. One is inventory. I can educate on what, inventory is growing in our area, not enough homes, more homes, whatever the case is. I want to give them the truth. Okay, what's the other truth about sellers? Well, Realtor.com did this study. 80% of sellers think they'll get their asking price or more. What about that? The house down the street sold for this. We want to sell ours for that. When the likelihood of that happening is a lot lower. Most recently, 62% of all homes that sold were sold less than the asking price. That means 38% sold over. So we want to, sort of pay attention to that and show people that reality. But I think right now we're seeing this turn in real estate reshaping the market. And it's something that if you don't give this information to a seller as they're getting ready or thinking about it, they may have a mismatched expectation. They may think, we think we're going to sell it quickly. We think we're going to sell it for, over the list price. And we have to come in as the educator with the truth. The University of Utah, they have an expectation on price. And if it's not being met, they'll just stay put. Move on. It's not worth the cost, or the move is not worth the cost. I think that's certainly true. I think people feel that way in the market right now. The other thing that we need to help people understand is homes are taking longer to sell. The average, median days on market as of May this year, 52 days. That's more than every year going all the way back to 2020. See where days shot up there as people kind of panicked and didn't do anything for a while, but we're getting back into that normal range of 2018, 2019 in this 50 plus days on market all over the country. And, depending on the state that you're in, that's different. Down in Florida, 75 days, up in maybe Michigan or here in Virginia, where I'm at, 36 days to sell a home. Still not enough inventory across the country. But those three dynamics, price, inventory, days on market, are starting to reshape what we see in American real estate. I think it'll continue to happen. I think we can be the educators, be out in front of this and talk to people about it. This topic right now is a great topic to record a video, to use Real Talk inside your KCM subscription to get the word out there. So the question right now that we're in the second half of the year, if you can believe that, it's hard to believe in 2026. We just finished the first half. What's coming for the second half, in the housing market? Logan Mohtashami here from Housing Wire. As we gear up for the second half of 2026, what are the key things we should be watching for? With the first 6 months being a dramatic version of the show 24, we can hope for a calmer second half of 26 now that the conflict with Iran is hopefully ending. Let's all, appreciate that, hope for that. We think that's the case. Mike Simonson said 4 years of post-pandemic inventory recovery appears to have plateaued. Now, listen, we talked about American real estate building back after the dip down in COVID. And the next graph, I want to maybe sit on it for just a second, explain it to you. It's the look at inventory as a percent change year over year. So use my cursor right here in November, January of 2023. Inventory growing dramatically as mortgage rates rise. As we turn the corner into 2023, you see that 70% growth year over year, dipping down, coming back up. And then right here, we're almost even. Right. Remember, I told you inventory's plateaued out. We're going to keep a look on that, keep an eye on that. But I think inventory, while it's grown over the last couple of years, several years, it's going to be something that sort of right now, if people don't have motivation to sell, they're going to hang on and say, hey, we'll wait and do that later. Home prices, if you look at the consensus estimates, anywhere from 4% to 0.6% out there, and people that are saying, what is it going to look like in the second half of this year, or adjusting their forecast, about 2.3% nationally. I don't see a case for home prices to go down nationally. I saw a piece of content the other day and somebody said, hey, prices are down year over year. That is not true. Maybe in your market or in your city, that could be true, but nationally, that is not true. Matter of fact, Lawrence Yun from NAR said Housing wealth accumulation will continue in 2026 with a typical homeowner gaining approximately $16,000 in wealth this year. That's pretty good. We're going to stay on top of that as well. Mortgage rates, the forecast here, and I want to talk about this in just a minute, but it's kind of flat. Nobody wanting to say they're going to come down. Nobody saying, hey, they're going to go up. Just sort of, the Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, just right there in the middle. If you were to look at this right now, where we sit through the third quarter, fourth quarter, and then into next year, 6.4, 6.3% is the consensus. I think we'll beat that. I think we will beat that for a number of different reasons. One of the reasons that I think we will beat that is the fact that oil is coming down. Rich Martin said this: oil matters particularly since it drives inflation expectations and thus influences the bond market from which mortgage rates are set. Now, listen, everything that we see from inflation in headlines is rearview mirror looking. Everything that financial markets look at is forward looking. I'll prove that to you here in just a minute. But what I had our team do, they did a phenomenal job of, is map the price of a barrel of oil as compared to the 30-year fixed mortgage rate. And here's what it looks like. The gray sort of bar is the price of oil. The green bar is the price of mortgages, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate. And they started to rise right here. That's what the Iran conflict sort of, happened. Oil prices go up, mortgage rates go up because oil is very inflationary. Everything that we need and use gets shipped on a truck. And we kind of go through the last few months of that. This is a look going back to the beginning of the year. So think about that as this year. And then we start, about a month ago, a little over a month ago, maybe, this talk of, peace. And can we get a peace deal together? That's sort of this box right here. Okay. And what do you notice is that's been debated. It's been like, we got a deal, we don't have a deal, we got a deal, we don't have a deal. The price of oil starts to come down. That's because traders in the market says, okay, they're going to come up with a deal, right? And regardless of what you believe in politics, hopefully that is the case, will remain the case and is true and all that. So the price of oil comes down, mortgage rates don't come down. Okay. Important to remember, there's that old statement: when rates go up, they take the escalator. When they come down, they take the stairs. Why is this important? Well, this is important because lower oil prices can cool inflation expectations, helping mortgage rates fall, even when the Fed holds its benchmark interest rate steady. So I'm not saying overnight mortgage rates are going to fall, but what I'm saying is this is a very good thing for mortgage rates, and we should expect that. Why is that? Because check this out. 3 times in the past, when we've seen that same phenomenon, where oil goes up, comes down, mortgage rates do the same. 99 to 2000 on the left, 05 to 06 in the middle there, 18 to 19 on the right side. I certainly think that's something we can point to right now and say that is something that we should pay attention to. I want you to have this information before anybody else does, so you can be out in the market watching it. We're going to stay on top of it as Keeping Current matters. The bottom line is lower energy costs can help reduce inflationary pressure, which is generally favorable for mortgage rates. All of this has caused NAR to come out and say, we expect home sales to be modestly better in the second half of 2026. That's interesting. Right. So I think they see the same thing as well. I think we'll see more activity in the second half of this year than we have in the first. Total sales should be slightly better than the last couple of years, 4.7 roughly, and knocking on the door 4.8, maybe 4.9 sales, relatively flat year over year in sales. The good news about this market right now, share this with your team, share this with anybody in our business, is more and more buyers are saying, yes, that's great. This is a look at single family pending home sales. The blue bar is 2026, higher than 24 and 25 still, given all the pressures and all the things like that. Now, if you look at total home sales by month, this is what we look at the census and NAR. This is what this looks like, kind of gradually growing up until May. and what it looks like for the remainder of the year. Okay. So the rest of the year should look a lot like our best month yet. That's encouraging. At the end of the day, I think now is the time to get in front of people, talk to them about this market, educate them on this market so that they can make the best decision for their family. Odetta Cushy said, overall, we expect pent-up demand to continue emerging gradually, but the pace of recovery will vary significantly across markets and will depend on the path of rates, labor conditions, and inventory growth. You know, I think this is the market more than ever to be the expert in, step in and say, this is what I see, this is what's happening, so that I can give you, Mr. and Ms. Seller, the best information possible. You know, at the end of the day, expired listings are happening out there. I want to spend just a minute and cover all this information from our good friends at RedX. If you're not using RedX, shout out to them. Certainly think about that. But the bottom line is 1.3 million sellers still need your help. They've given up on selling their home. Where do we get that number from? Well, 2.6 million listings expired or canceled in the last 12 months, and 51% never relisted. That means there are 1.3 million sellers out there right now who need your help. They gave up on the dream of selling their home. You know, in life, if we can help somebody do something they want to do, I think that's a wonderful thing. You know, let me break some of these numbers down for you. Listen, you're either listening to this, you are an agent that has a listing that'll be called that if it expires, or you're one calling a listing. Both of us need to say, okay, these are the facts. This is what is happening out there. So if your listing doesn't sell, it expires. Let's break down the numbers. If the seller rehires the same agent, the percent of sellers who sold after their house relisted, 43% with the same agent, 49.5%, call it 50% with a different agent, slightly higher with a new agent. Why is that? I think a new agent stepped in and said, if you do this, if you do that, change this, we'll sell the house, and they get it done. Now, here's something that's very interesting. How quickly sellers relist. If they're relisting with the same agent, it's about 8 days. Different agents, 25 days. There are 2 dates on the calendar where more listings expired than any other. It's December 31st and then June 30th. We're right in prime expired listing territory right now. You know, the other thing is homes sell almost a week faster with a different, or I'll call it new agent. On average, days to sell with the same agent, 73 days as compared to 68 with a new agent. You know, all this information I hope will help you with a listing you have, or maybe somebody that you're going to sit down with that didn't sell their home, so that you can be the expert they need to make a difference in them and their families' lives. Listen, it's always so fun to do the monthly market report. I hope this month gives you the information you need to be the expert in your market. Take this, get it out in the hands of people so that you can help them. You know, we covered a lot today. You may want to go back and watch it. Certainly download the slides and take a look. Always remember, any report that we reference is located in the notes section of the slides. So go out and use those. And we'll see you back next month for the monthly market report.